Okay, again, I don't know how we found our place here, but it is not Sunday. It is not 1:30 Pacific. It is like Thursday, 6:34. And how did this happen? We're on. We're live.
We're here.
Is this a formal episode, or we're just gonna
Yeah, I'll take care of it. Yeah, it is.
yours? Have it. I'm in the living room, by the way, so you might hear a puppy. You might hear people. I'm just displaced.
We're making it work.
Make it work. Frank, how are you?
I'm ready. Let's go.
We're live.
Ready. You ready?
Everyman BJJ, we're live. How you doing, Frank?
I'm doing good. Welcome to everybody to today's special edition of Everyman BJJ. Thursday night special edition. Yeah, they got Thursday night football. We might as well have Thursday night Everyman BJJ. I'm joined by Jordan Wirth, my man Noah Green. Noah, where is the Brazilian American flag? You usually have that. What's going on today? What happened?
It's upstairs. I am downstairs. Jacqueline is using the space, and since we're outside of our normal episode time, I'm bereft of normal decorations here. So
that's
I'm just against the wall.
Did you say
bereft? Bereft.
That's out of my vocabulary, my friend. I'm gonna have to do some context clues and figure that one out.
It'll happen. But
we were talking a little bit about earlier about sort of that balance where you were talking about marshmallow Noah. I was talking about pacifist Frank, and we were talking about sort of you and I have talked before, Noah, about losing streaks, like life's losing streaks, and how do you come out of that? And we were talking about sort of like me, I would call it sort of the chip on the shoulder. Like I was telling you earlier, chip on the shoulder, Frank won a lot more. But by conventional measures, by American measures of success, chip on his shoulder, Frank won more than nice Frank, than pacifist Frank, than introspective Frank, than reflective. So we were talking about that earlier. That was a really interesting conversation about sort of pushing those different buttons to at different times in your life to produce the results you want. Sometimes you might want to go into a cabin and disappear for 3 months and not say much. And I have a buddy here in Utah. He does what are called silent fasts. They're called, I guess he just tries to go days in just silence. And I see him around town sometimes, and he's doing these silent fasts. So I guess he's not 100% silent. So he went by the other day. Huh?
He does them in public, like in society?
Yeah, he still has to work, but I guess he just does his best to like be silent as much as he can. But I saw him the other day, and just to be nice, he said, "Hey, Frank," and he just kept going, like he didn't stop. He didn't stop. Normally, it's stop for conversation. So I guess like he's not 100% silent, but he's like minimally like, okay, gotta go. But what's interesting? A lot of people fast. So everybody thinks, of course, of fasting is in terms of, your weight loss and hormones and detox and all that sort of thing. Of course, there's the spiritual element to it. But a lot of people, like in religions, people will fast when they really want something. Let's say somebody's sick or somebody they love, when they're really asking for something, when there's a really strong prayer. A lot of people believe that when you fast, you're more likely to manifest that prayer or get that prayer answered. So it's an interesting thing. And I just found out today that guy, his sister is in the hospital. So I was thinking, yeah, he's got a lot going on, and I was wondering if that corresponded.
That's interesting that you say that, Frank. My friend, I have a friend. He moved now. He lives in I believe it's Taiwan. I'm pretty sure it's Taiwan. It's either Taiwan or Philippines or something like that, but I believe it's Taiwan. But he moved overseas. But before he moved overseas, I met this guy. He trains jiu-jitsu. He's a 10th Planet Purple Belt. His name is Marshall Stamper. Really, really nice guy, really talented guy. But he was telling me about something that changed his life and completely revolutionized his life, almost like a psychedelic trip, like I talked to you about. But he was saying that he went to But that was what I found interesting is your friend does it in society, in public still. My friend Marshall left to a retreat, and there was people there. He was living with people, but everybody was silent. Nobody spoke any words for a whole week, for 7 days. And you were around other people, and you would just look at them. You would eat food around them, and you would just spend time around them in like this little community area where you had food and water, but you just didn't. He said nobody spoke a word for 7 days, and a couple people broke and had to leave after a couple of days, and they started talking, and then they would leave if they started talking. But that really shocked me that the guy does it in society. I didn't think it would be possible to have very little to no talking while still functioning in society. That's super interesting.
Yeah, it's interesting that even in jiu-jitsu, unless you're Conor McGregor and you're in a fight, right, and you're talking to the other person, or Nick Diaz or Nate Diaz, jiu-jitsu is a silent art as well, right? Wrestling is a silent art, and it's interesting. It's its own language, but it is silent, and we're speaking.
Yes.
So you're speaking, you're expressing through your bodies, through your power, through your speed, through your flexibility, through your mental calculations. It's interesting. It is a turnoff. It is turning off your speech, and the only thing that's left, it really is, like we talk about in these Zen things of emptying your mind. When you've had your best performances, Jordan, and probably me too, you've really just emptied your mind. If I was to ask you, if I watched you and you were having a great training session or a great tournament, and I said, hey, what were you thinking about there? I mean, it's not like you're creating a novel in your head or a movie. You're not. If you come off the mat, you're not going to be like, well, I was noticing the woman in row 5, and then I was thinking about what I'm going to eat afterwards, and then I was thinking, the rent is kind of
no mind.
Yeah, nobody thinks that, right? Like it's totally. So it really is the opposite of speech, where people like Noah and I, who think so much, right? We just think, and we're constantly playing this chess game in our brain. And then you go to this special place. So the thing with a silent fast, like what your buddy is talking about, is there's a lot of intention there where you kind of know the rules, right? If he goes to that retreat, he kind of knows, like, hey, dude, don't be the guy who starts talking to everybody like, hey, where's the butter, right? Where's the muffins? Or, don't be that guy. So you're sort of, even if you want to speak, you don't want to be the oddball or the outcast, but normally, like, jiu-jitsu or a lot of things are just voluntarily surrendering, voluntarily emptying, or just naturally emptying, versus being forced to it, where if you go to church, you're not supposed to talk in church, right? You're not supposed to talk during church, even if you want to talk, right?
Yeah.
So that's really an interesting thing, where in jiu-jitsu, it's like, I mean, I don't know. I'm trying to think of any training partners who've ever talked to me. I'm trying to think of anybody who was ever talking smack, like in my whole history of training.
It happens.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of a guy who was ever like John Freeman. John Freeman is a guy that he doesn't talk like Connor talks, but he's a guy that talks a little smack, like, oh, you want some, he does. Remember John in the garage? John would do some of that. He'd have some of those sessions with guys where they would be kind of showy and everybody would watch, and he'd talk a little bit.
But while we're on that topic, Frank, I wanted to know what Noah has to say. Wait, can you guys still hear me?
Yeah, you're fine.
Yeah.
Okay. I thought I lost the audio for a second, but I know Noah does a lot of yoga, a lot of stuff like that, and that's what my friend Marshall actually did. He did a lot of yoga and stuff like that. That's how he actually found out about that, like, silent retreat. And he said while they were there, they were doing group yoga together, and he said it was kind of funny to do because they were trying to do yoga as a unit, but they couldn't speak, so they were just doing yoga, doing throughout their own movements and stuff like that. So Noah, have you heard of something like this before? Is this like a yoga thing? It sounded to me kind of like a yoga thing the way Marshall was describing it to me. Have you heard of this before?
It's not okay, so yoga is yoga and Buddhism go hand in hand a lot of times, and a lot of silent retreats, especially in the upstate New York. You can get into the Catskills Mountains, and there are Buddhist monasteries that you can go and spend a 10-day silent retreat at.
That makes sense.
And that's a common thing. So it's more of a Buddhist practice than it is a yoga.
And
But
that
they're
explains why he moved to the Buddhist country or whatever it is. I think it was Indonesia, I believe.
yeah, Indonesia. Well, Indonesia's yeah, it has
Or
multiple
Taiwan.
religions.
Maybe Taiwan. It was something like
Okay,
that. Yeah.
okay,
I remember the country he's in is heavily Buddhist. I know that.
okay. All right.
Well, Thailand is heavily Buddhist, I believe.
Thailand, definitely. Yeah,
Yeah.
it could be Thailand. You know, guys, you continue on. Since I'm downstairs with this puppy that I got, I just gave him his food. I gotta take away the bowl. So I
Go do your
passed
thing.
it. Yeah, I'll be right back. Yeah, it's just
All right.
circumstance here. I'll be right back. Go ahead.
Jordan, have you met his new addition? Noah's new addition?
Dude, I have, man. That dog is so cool looking. It's such an interesting looking dog. I've never seen this species of dog in my life.
Yeah, going halfway, whatever, pretty much all the way around the country. So how's your training going? What's up? You're back to normal. How many people are showing up at the gym? Have you guys seen a big drop off? How's the turnout? Are you guys doing every day? Are you guys doing 5 or 6 days a week, or just a couple days a week?
We're doing every day. Yeah, every day. I'm new. I don't know if you've heard yet, Frank, but I'm actually the new head coach now at the 11 a.m. program in Henderson. So now I'm the head coach. I teach there 11 a.m. Monday through Thursday. I'm the head coach. I've been teaching the program now for the past 2 weeks. It's been doing really, really good. We've been having pretty big classes, man. Like, we're technically only allowed to have 15 people on the mats. So I'm not going to self-incriminate the gym and say we're having any more than that, but we've been having big classes. We've been having 15 people on the mats.
Wow. Do they have? Does 10th Planet have their third affiliate there? I think there was. I saw you on Facebook, like 10th Planet Spring Valley. Are there 3 now? I know there's one in Las Vegas. There's one in Henderson. Is there a third 10th Planet now?
So that 10th Planet is already existing. That's Spring Valley, California. That's a different 10th Planet. Yeah.
Okay. Is Casey still? Is he? I know he was living. Is he full time in Nevada, or is he just kind of floats back and forth between California and?
Casey's full time in Nevada. He's been in full time in Nevada since he's moved out here and since 10th Planet Las Vegas has opened up. But he was moved. He had a house out here and his family was out here, but he was doing a lot of traveling back and forth to Orange County. He has since given up a lot of the ownership, if not all of the ownership. I'm not sure exactly all of the business side of what he's doing, but he is staying now local, just completely exclusively in Las Vegas and giving all of his time to the downtown gym and to the Las Vegas gym. He's not really going out to Orange County and doing much or going out there and doing anything out there.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. So is Noah going to come in to train with you? I know Noah does some privates with you. Does Noah come and does he ever come to the academy?
He hasn't. Noah's been to 10th Planet Las Vegas before, but me and Noah aren't training together at 10th Planet Las Vegas. He's planning on coming over to my house. I have mats at my house, and I went over to his house, and I go over to his house, and I just drill some techniques with him. You know, some of the head and arm stuff. I was showing him head and arm from bottom half guard, how you can lock a head and arm choke. If they try to reach over the head and attack your arm, you can actually lock a head and arm choke from the bottom, and then use your butterfly hook to sweep him over, and then finish the head and arm choke on top. I was showing him some stuff from the half guard that he may be able to implement in his game with the private lessons that he spent with you.
Nice. Very nice. Yeah, so we were Noah and I were talking a little bit earlier, and we were just talking about, we always talk about mindset here because at the end of the day, that's the first mover. You're if your head's on right, then you tend to be growing and performing. And if it's not, and I always say, and I said this in my TEDx talk, like that balance between force and flow, between yin and yang. And I was telling Noah that, I think I'm going to be a little more intense again, like the ultra competitive Frank. That guy can be a little bit harder to deal with. He can be a little bit more stubborn, a little harder to deal with. A little bit quicker, doesn't take as much stuff. But on the other hand, that part of me tends to win a lot more. I tend to perform in terms of, in terms of financial production and getting projects done and meeting deadlines. And really, I've always been at my best. And this, I'm not saying this is nirvana, because I don't think this is top of the pyramid, but I still have been wired for a long time to just prove people wrong. I don't know why. I've always loved that as a fuel. I just love it. I know it's not the top of the pyramid, right? I know it's not the highest motivation ever, but I just love it when people say X, Y, and Z, or they underestimate me, or they think in fact, earlier today, I was writing when I was at a cafe and I was doing a lot of writing, and in between I stopped and wrote like these 10 or 12 things, that negative things that I've heard people said about me. Frank is this, Frank is all talk, Frank is this. And I'd heard there was a person who's very, a friend of mine who's very, very, very successful. And it gotten back to me one time. He said, Frank is all talk, Frank, meaning compared to him, right? He's this mega, and I'm, he said, and I wrote that down. I thought, remember that was said by somebody that you really like and by somebody very, very successful. But remember that was said, even though I've been productive and I've done some cool stuff. But I wrote down like 10 or 12 of those, and I thought, okay, Frank, we're going to tap in for the next couple months. We're going to tap into some of that dark side energy. We're going to channel some of that negative dark side energy, and we're going to do some cool stuff with it, and we're going to use it as fuel. So that's something that that's at the top of my mind, I guess, today, is I'm not afraid. I used to be afraid of that because I'm like, well, Frank, that chip on your shoulder, that ultra competitive guy, he's not always the easiest person to get along with. He can be a little bit gruff. He can be a little brutally honest. But the reality is that side of me produces a lot of results, gets things done. So I'm going to
So I was going to say, Coach Casey talks about something super, super similar to that. So as you know, like this is 10th Planet Jiu-Jitsu, the type of Jiu-Jitsu that I train. And 10th Planet has a lot of open-minded, out there thoughts, you know what I mean? Eddie Bravo's production company for his, I don't know exactly what it is, but the thing that produces EBI is Ayahuasca Productions. That's the name of his production company, so it's named after a very popular psychedelic. And so Eddie has really, really out there ideas, and Casey is Casey is 10th Planet for sure, but Casey has the opposite viewpoint of Eddie on a lot of certain things. Casey's more clean cut, more get in there, grind. This is how we do things. This is the correct way. Don't be lazy. Work really hard. Get to the top. Casey's kind of more hard cut than Eddie Bravo is. And so there's a lot of conflicting viewpoints every once in a while in the gym, and Casey's always talking about all of the greatest things that are accomplished usually from fires inside of somebody. There's a fire burning inside of that person. And a lot of the time that fire that's burning inside of that person is not coming from the healthiest point. You know what I mean? It's not because that person is completely happy with everything in their life and they're completely whole and content. There's something burning inside of that person, making them want to go out there and get stuff done, And a lot of the time that's not necessarily coming from the healthiest point, but it's causing a lot of healthy reactions to get done in life. And when you do certain out there far-fetched things like ayahuasca or different psychedelics, Casey thinks that can kill that fire inside of you and make you too content with life and make you just not really want to go out and just have that fire that you were just talking about, Frank, that drive to go out there and get things done, no matter if things are technically getting done the right way or quote unquote the correct way. You're going out there, it doesn't matter. You're going out there and making things happen. A lot of the time that happens from Casey also talks about that happens as you're a young man, that as you get older, as you get older, that fire is dying out. So you have to get that done in your youth. So I was also going to tell you, Frank, I'm not calling you old at all, but it's so awesome to see that fire is still burning inside you, even in your age. So that's awesome, my man.
Yeah. Elon Musk and Steve Jobs would be two people that stand out in the entrepreneurial world, right? In the big, like the Fortune 500 world. Both, Elon, you see Elon Musk out there, and he's just, he's a maniac in the way that would be advantageous to an entrepreneur trying to do the things he's trying to do. And Steve Jobs was out there too. I mean, he was extremely extreme. And a lot of times in that entrepreneurial space where it's so competitive, and it is, it's like I've heard, I know people that have met Steve Jobs and everything. And I was listening to Steve Jobs 2 nights ago, like Steve Jobs' top 10 rules for success. And I know people that had met him and they were, he could be really difficult if he was on an elevator and you were on an elevator and he didn't know you. You weren't supposed to, a lot of the employees were told basically don't speak to him. I've heard that sort of thing, like don't speak to Mr. Jobs. He doesn't like it if he doesn't know you. So you see people that can have these quirks, or they can be a little difficult, or they can be very stubborn, or they can have tempers, but sometimes the ends justify the means, depending on where you want to go. Because this is the one thing too, guys, I would say, this is, Noah, you can speak to this, where a lot of times the me that's ultra competitive is laser focused, because I'm just like, look, I don't have time to mess around. Like, I have to do this, I have to get this done, and we're running a tight ship, and da-da-da. And then the more I'm like flowy and patient and pacifistic and peace loving, the more it's like I'm open to randomness, I'm open to spontaneity, I'm super kind to everyone. And then you look up and you're thinking, wait, I just lost an hour in this beautiful random conversation, but I have things I have to get done, right? The trains need to run on time. And so it's that person that gets things done a lot of times is the one that's it's more that, again, I would say warrior poetry, right? The warrior. I think I've gotten a little docile on the warrior side, right? I'm a little bit docile. I've focused on the poetry side here for the last 3-4 years, a lot on the poetry side, a lot on the healing side, a lot on the nature side, a lot on the flow side. And now I'm looking and saying, hey, Frank, with where you want to go for these next 3, 4, 5 years, you're going to need a lot of fuel and a lot of fire. So that guy you left behind that has the chip, that has the edge, a little bit crazy in the right ways, you got to bring that guy back, because you're going to need him. You're not going to move this mountain. And the other thing, though, is that part of us, that fiery side, is the part to move the mountain a lot of times, right? Sometimes it's time to stand on the mountain, navigate the mountain. Sometimes you just got to move the mountain. You actually got to get out and move the mountain. And that's the gorilla. That's the gorilla part of us. Sometimes it's like tapping into that gorilla, but making it so that gorilla doesn't eat you alive and ruin you, or and you go up in flames with that gorilla. It's like, how do you make peace and find balance with the gentleman side, the warrior side and the poet side? That's something I'm always wrestling with. But I've been turning up the warrior quite a bit in the last couple weeks.
Pardon me real quick while I bring Jordan back on.
Okay.
Jordan, can you hear me?
I can hear you. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, you're fine.
Okay, I lost the audio. I could see you guys just fine. I just couldn't hear anything. I tried to
that's
down. I don't know what happened, man. The sound just cut out. I couldn't get it back.
okay. That's unfortunate. At some point later in this year, I'll see if I can get you guys a setup with a mic and a ring, a light ring, and a device that you can check in with instead of just using your cell phones to make this easier. I just finished a book by Michael Pollan. He published it May 15th, 2018. And the title of it's How to Change Your Mind. And he goes through psychedelics. He self-experimented on psilocybin, ayahuasca, LSD, and I think there may be one more out there. I don't know if he used DMT, but everything that what you're just describing, Frank, with having that edge. And especially with what you just described, Jordan, with in how you've very well articulated that what Coach Casey says to do about being young and having that fire. I want you to imagine trying to do what you're doing without having an ego.
Yes,
okay,
exactly.
So one of the things as you get older and you have teams that you have to manage, if you have a whole gym that you have to develop, and you'll hear it a lot, and I've been seeing this a lot in how John Danaher expresses why he chose to be a master coach as opposed to being a master competitor, as opposed to being an academic. And that's come out recently in his London Reel interviews. You can find that on YouTube easily.
Oh, I started watching that. Yeah, that's really good.
Yeah, they're fantastic. So you can use the dark energy, as you call it, that anger,
Yes.
because what you're doing is you're actually strengthening your ego. However, you can also play this as you're making the world a better place by you pushing your agenda, because it's not about your ego. So in one way you could frame it as, oh, this is my ego, and I'm using anger to get things done with what the things people said about me.
Yeah.
In time, you want to, become inured. There's another one. You become inured to criticism. You become more deaf in a lot of ways to criticism that lacks merit, and because your ego, you're comfortable with your ego getting picked on and messed with. Because people are always going to talk smack about you, always, no matter what you do, they're going to always talk smack about you. And at some point, you grow beyond the ego, and you tap into developing others, because that by pursuing your agenda. What makes a great master coach is not that they're the competitor, not that they're the competitor, but that they shine the light onto others. But you have that coach also has to get their agenda of it. One way that Danaher teaches during midday, and he'll have 100 people on the mat, is instead of him using a loud booming voice, he speaks very softly.
Yeah.
And that pulls in the energy. So you can still work with your ego and get things done without having to shout.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah,
we have
this is the thing. The way that ego is defined, Noah. So I think ego might be the most mystified word in the whole. Ego might be the most mystified word in the whole English language. I mean, it is so many things. When people hear the word ego, they have an automatic bias and they automatically ascribe negative things to it, negative emotions, someone who thinks they're all that, somebody who's not a team player, somebody who's full of themselves, somebody who's a narcissist. That's the way ego has been used. I think ego is really only a problem. What you alluded to one thing, when it's really coming from a really negative place, and when you're really that concerned with what everyone else thinks. Because let's imagine if you were an egotistical athlete who was worried about what everyone else thought, then when you went out there, okay, there's 5,000 people in the stands, or you're at a UFC and there's 17,000 fans. When you went out there, you'd be so worried about, what do I look like? How do I look? I could look stupid, right? If you were that egotistical, not only would you be full of yourself, but you could be so worried about what other people think, or what if I lose, right? That's another problem with ego, is it can hurt your performance. Forget about if you're a narcissist and you're negative. You would just be more worried about what does everyone else think, and you might be more worried about that than your actual performance, than getting in the zone, right? So there's an advantage to sort of what we would call surrendering, where surrendering meaning I am not thinking about these 17,000 people, other than there's some energy there that I can feel, that I can ride, that I appreciate, that makes me better. But I'm not worried about, I'm not going to look out there and during the fight and look at somebody in row 10 or row 20 and think, oh, that person doesn't look entertained. Why aren't you entertained? You don't care on that level. You're surrendering. You're completely in the moment. But I think that, this thing with ego is, we can talk about no ego, no ego, no ego. But the reality is there's probably very few super high performers that don't bring an ego to the table. I mean, most people, including some of the champions of champions, gold medalists, Super Bowl champions, they're huge, humongous egos. That's not to say they're at the mountaintop. That's not to say they're at the peak. They are high up the mountain, but they still have a lot of the ego. If they wanted to go further, they would have to continue to sculpt that ego and do different things to that ego. But again, you might, it's like when I used to watch certain fighters, right? Everybody would assume that if you were going to go and fight in the UFC, that you need to be calm and like Anderson Silva and just flow. But that's a mistake, because let's take somebody like Wanderlei Silva. If we had made a docile, tame, flow state Wanderlei Silva, he wouldn't have been Wanderlei Silva. We wouldn't be talking about him. It just wouldn't fit. I'm not saying that at some point he couldn't have figured it out. But imagine when Wanderlei Silva was a tornado, when he was the guy who walked out like an old Mike Tyson, that's the Wanderlei on an entertainment level, on a results level. That guy wins a lot. If you ask him to go out there and be playful and carefree and relaxed like Anderson, it's not going to work. So some people, even the old Mike Tyson, right? The old Mike Tyson. I mean, Mike Tyson went out there like they said, like you stole something from him, like you had done something bad to his family. I mean, he went out there. It was personal. When the old, young, prime Mike Tyson fought you, it was personal, brother. It wasn't just, I don't care what you think or whatever. It wasn't just business. It was personal. So everybody, there are a lot of ways. There are a bunch of different approaches. Just like there's different styles in jiu-jitsu. There's different styles. There's different techniques. There's different, certain people win with athleticism. Certain people win with technique. Somebody like Roger Gracie doesn't even look like he's warming up. Some athletes warm up like Chael Sonnen, where they run tons of sprints before the fight. And you'd say, wow, he's going to be tired because he ran too many sprints. He's getting his central nervous system too woken up. It is true. Like if your ego is too big and you're not coachable, you're going to be a problem. You're going to be a team killer. You're going to hurt your development. That we can all agree on. But to say to get rid of all your ego and all of your, your ultra competitive and the dark sides and no, it's almost like you need just as much of that won't get you in jail, that won't get you kicked off the team, that'll still make you coachable. How much of your fire, how much of your anger, how much of your negative dark energy can you keep, but still be a nice person, not get arrested, not get kicked off the team, not be called a narcissist? That's the balance. Like as much as you can while still being a good citizen, still being coachable, still being a good teammate. But to throw that away, my God, if it's used properly, if it's channeled properly, it's as good a fuel. The final thing I'll say, I've said this many times, it's worth repeating. Among the highest performers I've seen, overwhelmingly, they're more concerned, they're more motivated by what they stand to lose. What they stand to lose than what they stand to gain. Let me say it again. What they stand to lose. I'm not saying that's top of the pyramid. I'm just saying a lot of people are more like, I don't want to lose that. I don't want to. It's the same thing in like a marriage. If you look, this is a really important detail, okay? So you look and you'd say, if you're a super successful guy, you're married to a beautiful woman, you've got a beautiful family, you're going to be married for 20 years. Why are you never going to cheat on her? You're a good-looking guy. You're super successful. Women notice you. Why are you never going to cheat on that woman? And you say, well, I'm never going to cheat on my wife because I love my wife. And you know what I'll say to that? Knowing men the way that I know them, knowing dating the way that I know it, knowing relationships the way that I know it, I will say BS to that. The vast majority of men, especially super successful men that will have opportunities, right? The reason that they wouldn't cheat, the biggest reason that I've seen that a successful man, a very successful man, a man who a lot of women notice, the biggest reason that he wouldn't cheat that I have seen is what he stands to lose. It's how much he would hurt her, how much she's irreplaceable, how much he wouldn't want to hurt her, how much he loves waking up every day to see his kids. It's what he has to lose that will carry him through certain days if there's a lot of temptation. It's what he stands to lose, not, oh, I just love my wife and I love my kids. That sounds good. That sounds hunky-dory. That wears off for a lot of people. You know what doesn't wear off? What would you lose if you did that? If you cross that line, What would you lose? Oh my gosh, better not do that. That'll keep you in line. As far as, hey, I love my wife, whatever, you know, guys start thinking, yeah, I love my wife, but this isn't working. No one will know. No one will know, right? But then you think, well, but if she did know and she did find out, you're going to know. Maybe if you believe in God, God's going to know. But she finds out, what do you stand to lose, brother? Hey, think about that for a second. What do you stand to lose? And that same psychology works for entrepreneurs. It works for athletes. And that's a common psychology that I see motivate a lot of people. It's like, oh my God, I don't want to blow that. I don't want to lose that. This is we got a good thing going here. This ain't easy to replace. Let's not blow this. Not always, let's gain this. It's like, let's not mess this up. Let's not blow this. This is where it's at, right? I don't know if you've ever felt something like that, Noah, or you have something, you're like, whoa, this is too good to blow. This is too good to mess up. Let's make this work.
Oh yeah. No, yeah. And there's also a what's called a logical fallacy in that, which is sunk cost. The reason why, you know, like if maybe on Jordan's side, if he's on a date and he's like, man, I've already taken this dame out to here. I've already spent this much time with it. I'm not going to bail on the date. You know, that the logic fallacy of sunk cost is that, oh, I've already put so much into it. Why should I leave? But, you know, that's where that's where we, it's hard for us to let go. You know, more people in the stock market, whenever a stock appreciates, so let's say it's at 100, all right, and it goes to 400, and then it falls back down to what they bought it for, and it goes below. It's really hard for them to sell at a loss because I put 100 in, it went to 400, and now it's 90. It's really hard for them to sell at that because of the logic fallacy of sunk cost. There's a lot of logic fallacies that we live with day in, day out. You know, what you should do is, as a mature person, is to step back and say, what is it that's not working here? It's not working. What is it that's not working? And try to improve that. You know, look at well, you know, what is that? You know, that's the more the egoless approach, I believe, is to step back and go, what isn't working here, instead of seeking something outside of what you got, because you already have all that you need. It may not be all that you want, but you have all that you need to survive and to thrive. You have all that you need already. It's all there. It's all provided for you.
Did Muhammad Ali have a humongous ego? How would you rate Muhammad Ali's ego on a 1 to 10, with 10 being like the biggest ego someone could have? How would you rate Muhammad Ali's ego?
So Frank, I haven't studied him enough to really rank him. I know that he was a poet. He was definitely a true poet, and how he hyped up his fights. You know, he brought a lot of that to the table. You know, I'm about to start George St. Pierre's biography. That's my next book to start after I finish one book. And I'm eager to see how GSP, you know, to get inside his mind a bit, and hopefully I can get something accurate through this biography. So, just based on what little I know about Muhammad Ali, he's probably pretty strong ego. You know, fight like sting like a bee. You know, I'll hit you so fast. What? So I don't know. There's so many sayings, and I just don't have them off the top of my head. So I'd say he's probably a high ego. Mike Tyson. Yeah, but these guys. Well, for Mike Tyson, you know, it's not a healthy approach. It's not a healthy relationship with the ego. You know, nowadays I see that Mike Tyson's in his performances, he has a much wiser grasp of his ego. Seems to be, you know, although he's said, you know, and what's been really talked about a lot, was that once he starts engaging that ego, he's afraid of what it will do. He didn't want to open that, he didn't want to open that genie, open that bottle with that genie in it again, but he has. He is playing with his ego again.
Well, what if that ego is the only part of him that could have done what he did, what he's known for, what actually made him? Yes, he's evolved, and good for him. I mean, he seems to be doing well, and he's saved himself. But what if he never had that ugly ego, that ginormous ego, and the world never knew him? And all the podcasts and all the things he does now, and the nice houses he lives in, and the celebrities he meets with, none of it possible without that dark side, that humongous ego that went off the train tracks and almost ruined him and almost killed him. But at the same time, it's a double-edged sword, because it gave him, it made him, it etched him in our memories. It etched him in our minds.
Right.
It was unforgettable. It was palatable. It was visceral. It was a beautiful violence. It was everybody's worst fear. Like, hey, may I never go to prison and have to share a cell with someone like that? Or may I never be in a dark alley and have to encounter something like that? There's a lot of vicariousness there. I remember when I was younger, you might remember this, Noah. I remember when everybody was like, Mike Tyson was so ferocious and so fearsome that we were like, would you fight Mike Tyson for $5 million? Right? Everybody was doing that. It was like, nobody wanted to fight Mike Tyson, but it was like, would you even fight him for $5 million? And $5 million when I was like, in the early 1980s would be like, $30 or $40 million now. And it was like, it was that extreme. Like, would you fight Mike Tyson for $5 million? Oh, I really wouldn't want to fight him, but if he hit me a couple times, I would just fall, and then I would collect the money. And I mean, we were doing that as little, as 12-year-olds.
Oh, sure.
We were sitting there. That's how. So again, we all know, like, if people inherently find big egos nauseating, and people inherently don't like people like that. But again, the other thing is, you've got people out there who, and even including some of these people, I'm not saying George St. Pierre, but you've got a lot of people that pretend publicly that they don't have a big ego, but they have a huge ego. They're just introverted, or they're very, they're very packaged. They're very political about how they talk. And so there's a lot of people in big league finance and business and sports who actually have massive egos, but they're very good at concealing it or not showing it, not showing the fangs, where you have somebody like, obviously, like a Muhammad Ali or Conor McGregor, who now again, because this is the thing with like Conor, and Conor's gotten himself into trouble, but Conor in many ways is very lovable. He's funny. He's incredibly entertaining. Ali is was incredibly entertaining, and had this kind of like this, especially if you ever look at old Ali skits on like YouTube and you watch him interact with kids. He goes into kids' classrooms and he speaks to kids. I mean, the guy's really good with kids. It's like, he is a funny guy. There's something about him that is likable. But on the other hand, he's cruel too. If you listen to like some of the stuff he would say to Joe Frazier before the fights, and the insults, I mean, they were very those things really bothered Joe Frazier, even on a personal level, like they hurt him, and so he could be really cruel. He could be really cruel inside the ring, where he would carry guys. Carrying guys means, and this happens more in boxing than MMA, but sometimes when you carry a guy, it means you might want to punish him. You don't want to finish him. You don't want to knock him out. You want to punish him. In the old days, boxing was 15 rounds, not 12 rounds. They lowered it because they wanted to cut down on the brain. They found out that a lot of that brain damage would happen in those later rounds, the championship rounds 13, 14, 15. Fighters would be tired. They'd be more stationary, accumulation of punches. So then they went to 12 rounds. But Ali was the kind of guy too, who he would carry you. He'd be like, look, what's my name? What's my name? What's my name? And he would just punish you. And then at the time of his choosing, he might take you out. So he could be a pretty, like a lot of the great ones, he had what we would call killer instinct. He had that.
My phone died, gentlemen. Sorry about that. I thought it was on the charger. It was on the charger. I thought it was charging, I should rather say.
Yeah. Well, the stage is yours. The stage is yours now, Jordan. So what's on the top of your mind?
The stage is mine. You're gonna put me on the spot like this, Frank?
Oh,
That's all good.
We were talking. I have a topic. We were talking earlier about. So I remember in the old days, it was like, who deserves to know like the martial arts or jiu-jitsu? You had this very special power.
Yeah.
Trained with this very magical martial art, and we're training people in violence. Yes, there's all of these intangible qualities and honesty and humility and commitment and all these warm, fuzzy things and character development and people building skills and the United Nations where people of all races and religions get along. All that kumbaya, beautiful stuff is here on the mats. We know that, but let's not mistake it. I mean, there's a side of it where there's an animal side, there's a primal side, there's a savage side, there's a side where people are just trying to dominate you. Man, you could feel like, and let's be honest with people out there who've never trained, there are moments of training on the mat where you could feel like you're in a living hell. You're so tired, you're so exhausted. Mm-hmm. The person in front of you is so formidable and so determined and so like primally animalistic that you're like, man, like, that sometimes you're like, how much time's on the clock? Like, well, yeah. This is like, oh my God, I can't get out of here. I'm trapped, or I'm trapped here. What the heck? Like, how do I get this goon off me? How do I get this force off me? How do I stop this guy? Right. Or, there's moments out there, if you've trained a long time, where you're like, dude, how do I stop this person? Like, this person is just a beast, right? Literally like a beast. And so we are training people in violence. We are training them, if they ever find themselves in real situations, to diffuse those situations, to use harm if necessary, right? And so the question now is, with everything we're seeing, with even some of the protests, some of those that have become violent, or some of the cases where, there are certainly many police officers out there that do a great job. It's a tough job, but we're seeing a lot of videos of police brutality where police didn't handle it right, where they're just grossly overreacting, way excessive force, just gross to watch. And so now there's putting under the microscope about police training. And the question is, like, at what point do we as instructors, like, it's always been there, who do we say, hey, I'm sorry, but you can't be trusted. We can't show you this stuff. We don't want to show you this because we don't trust you to use it properly. We don't trust you. We think you could be a loose cannon. Like, when's the last time you saw that in a gym? And how do we go about policing that? Like, who we decide to train and share these special skills with, and who we say, yeah, you know what? I really don't think that somebody with your temperament or your attitude right now is ready. You're not ready to learn these chokes, these arm bars, these heel hooks. You're not ready for that kind of power. I don't trust you're going to use it responsibly.
That's a really, 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 really tough question to answer. It's a great question, but it's a very tough question to answer. There's not really a good way to answer that question, I feel like. So unfortunately, I feel like a lot of the time, that question could be answered a couple different ways. Let me start off by saying, I do not think there is really a way to screen people for martial arts from day one and be able to tell if they're going to be an issue or not. For the most populace, I think for some crazy wackos out there, you could tell right off the bat, like, oh man, this dude does not need to learn jiu-jitsu. But for the most part, most people are going to learn jiu-jitsu, and you're not going to really be able to tell if they're a danger to society or not until they're exactly that, until they are a danger to society, And a lot of the time, it's almost too late at that point because the person's already even once you become a blue belt in jiu-jitsu, you're a weapon. You're a humanized weapon when you're a blue belt. You can, like they say, a real blue belt in jiu-jitsu would beat the average black belt in any other martial art. Once you become a blue belt in jiu-jitsu, you're a threat to society. You need to be able to control yourself. You need to be able to be a good functioning person of society. But you guys, okay, it keeps freezing on me. I keep thinking on my phone.
Oh, well, you're fine. No, you're good.
But, so yeah, I'm not gonna name any names or anything. I'm gonna be completely not name anything so that this person doesn't get outed. But one of my really good friends, they're a higher belt. They're higher than blue belt, and they're losing their mind right now. And they're going off the deep end. Almost everybody around them in their circle is really worried about them. They're thinking they need professional help, and the guys just just losing his mind. And it's kind of to that point, like, man, like who's going to be this guy's coach to take the guy underneath his wing and then like invest into this guy and then is going to stand there and be like, yeah, this is my guy. I stand by this guy and I let him represent me, you know, like it becomes a really, really peculiar spot, because when you start acting all crazy and like a threat to society like that, not only are you an actual danger to society, now you're making your coach and your lineage look bad, you know? So almost right away, that if that does start happening, like a higher belt, even if it's just a blue belt, or even really just a talented, even just a white belt, just anybody, if they start acting super crazy, I think, to answer your question, Frank, just to be as simple as possible, I think it's up to the coach's concern to watch their students and to be there in the students' lives. You know, if the coach is never there and the coach doesn't talk to the students and the coach doesn't talk to know what's going on in the students' personal lives.
Oh, we lost them, man. Yeah.
He was dropping.
Yeah,
he was dropping gems, and then.
Yeah, he was dropping gems today. He's definitely on it. You know, before, you know, hopefully he can come back quickly. I would say, you know, if we go to the gym, you know, like a 24-hour fitness or a Gold's Gym or a Lifetime, this kind of a relationship with the trainer does not exist. You know, this is what's really unique about this sport. If you're on a basketball team, you know, like on a, you know, after hours weekend, Wednesdays, you know, on a Wednesdays or a, you know, some kind of leisure recreational league, this kind of relationship that you have with your coach does not, it can't, I'd be hard pressed to see if this kind of relationship exists, because, you know, there's not that gravitas of responsibility of a coach to, oh yeah, I'm going to teach you how to throw a ball into a hoop. I'm going to teach you how to kick a ball through a rectangle. That kind of relationship doesn't, you know, this is something that is very unique. It is special because of the effectiveness and powerful, there's just a power that jiu-jitsu has of control. So that, you know, there is a lot of responsibility.
You know, I think.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I think part of that, Noah, is that a lot of these other sports, even, you know, where you're chasing a ball, you're involved ball, they're a lot more superficial. Like this sport, the combat sports and jiu-jitsu and wrestling are so intimate, and they force you to go to the deepest, darkest, and every particle and place of yourself. They force you to pull from everywhere. Whereas, you know, basketball, you could be sitting around watching somebody else dribble, and they're doing so, they're off in a corner, and you're waiting for them to pass the ball, and like you don't have to go. In general, you don't have to dig as deep. And so here, since you have to dig deep, the bonds, even with coaches, like you know, I saw something. There was a guy, the guy from, I think it was the heavyweight for the University of Michigan, and he had, you know, remember, I don't know if you remember the old movie Vision Quest, where the, you know, the guy, what's his name, whatever his name, Cooch or whatever, the villain there is. I'm probably messing his name up, but he's got the big log and he's climbing up the stadium stairs, and it's like, oh my God, this is your future opponent. You got to beat this guy who's never been beaten. And he walks up stadium stairs with these big logs, and he's so strong. Well, anyway, this guy from University of Michigan had like this tree log that is the biggest log I've ever seen a guy squat. I've never seen a guy like this log is so, this guy's like a 275-pound guy, and he's got this log and he's just repping it out, right? Boom, boom, boom. And so I shared it on Facebook, and I said, listen, I was like, see guys like this in basketball, when they see somebody with Michael Jordan's amazing will to win, or Kobe Bryant, like, wow, look at his will to win. Guess what? They're a dime a dozen in wrestling and the combat sports. Those guys with those, you know, with those mindsets, and like the David Goggins mindsets, they're a dime a dozen among Navy SEALs, among special forces, among elite UFC fighters, among elite wrestling. Even, dude, you've got high school wrestlers out there that have that will to win. You've got tons of high school wrestlers that have that will to win. So it's like, it's just interesting to see how, like, these are extraordinary wills to win in other sports. And in wrestling, it's like, oh God, we got a lot of them. You mean the hardest worker in any room? Oh yeah, wrestling's got a ton of those. Oh yeah, boxing's got a ton of those. Oh, jiu-jitsu, elite jiu-jitsu, we got a ton of those. Oh, elite UFC fighters. Oh yeah, they'll outwork you. You know, there's
all day
people out
long.
there there's and no disrespect, Michael Jordan is the man, greatest basketball player ever. I loved watching him. Bro, there's tons of people in combat sports that put Michael Jordan's work ethic to shame. I mean, it's just not. This is you're talking about different breeds, different animals. Go watch Dan Gable videos. You want to see super, super, super extreme, super maniacal. Just go study old Dan Gable. And I wrote a story years ago for Real Fighter magazine about Dan Gable. I got to interview Dan Gable for 2.5 hours. And when I interviewed Dan Gable, Noah, the intensity it's the most intensity that ever came through a telephone in my life by a lot. And I interviewed a lot of people over the phone as a reporter, whatever. I had sheriffs call me and yell at me, whatever. I have never felt tension and passion through the phone line exponentially like Dan Gable. He was on another planet. And he was in his 60s, okay? Dan Gable was like 60 something when I'm listening. Imagine what he was at 25, at 30. It was like, oh my God, this guy's jumping through the phone line, right? So what I'm saying is that the will to win in this. So again, a lot of these other sports, with all due respect, relatively speaking, very superficial to the soul compared to the fights. The fight sport, when you go to a basketball game, you're worried if you're going to lose, you're going to have a bad game, or they're worried about what they're going to do after the game or what time they're going to get to sleep. When people go to a fight, they're wondering, am I going to spend the night in the hospital? Am I getting a CAT scan? Are they going to wake me up? Am I getting knocked out? You're going to go deeper. You're going to go deeper mentally. When the consequences are what they are in these sports, you're going to go way deeper than if you're hitting a ball or you're throwing a ball. No disrespect. Yep. I love basketball. I love tennis. But in terms of what forces you to go deep in yourself in general, so that's the thing that you're talking about. That's the reflection. That's the relationships. That's the bonding. And your coach, the thing is, your coach, and I'll say we're very lucky in the fight sports. Your coach can watch you, and they know exactly. You're not fooling anybody, right? Your coach knows exactly what's going through your mind, watching you roll. Your coach is not a psychic, but your coach, by the time they're black belt, has been through so many rolls. They could watch you roll for 5 minutes, and guess what? Without you saying a word, they know your thought process. They know if you were too nervous. They know if you were hesitant. They know if you were too tense. And guess what? And nobody's psychic, but we're not stupid. We've done it. We've been doing this for thousands and thousands of hours, and we can watch you. And it's the same thing like a UFC fight. Guys say, every once in a while, listen, I've watched thousands of UFC fights. Every once in a while, you got to be so brave to make it one. Every once in a while, though, you watch a fight and the fighter won it out. It was just too much. The fighter got smoked.
Yeah, I've seen a few of those lately. Yeah.
And they won it out, right? They just won it out. They rolled over. They didn't give everything, right? They didn't wait for the ref stop it. They won it out. They wanted it to be over with. They quit on themselves. It happens, okay? It happens in wrestling. It happens in jiu-jitsu. It happens in sports. And when it usually happens, the athlete afterwards is like, they'll usually make some excuse of some sort. Well, but I thought, man, I got my eye poked. He kicked me in the groin and I was still trying to think whatever. And, I didn't tap or whatever. You see all kinds of, no, I didn't actually tap. And the video shows that he did tap or whatever, right? Or that he rolled over. And it's like, wait, if you really wanted to fight, you wouldn't have rolled over like that, right? But the thing is, it's a crystal. I used to say fighting in the mats, right? Leo Vieira used to tell me, and he probably didn't invent, but the mats don't lie. I used to say many years ago, even when I used to sit down with Dana White, that fighting shines a crystal ball on your character, right? You're in a fishbowl. It's a crystal ball. Everything you are, there's no hiding it. And that is the thing where your coach, if you were to go into a fight, your coach, you can't BS your coach. You can't BS most of the fans. You can't BS your coach, Henzo, whoever's there with you, Jordan. We can watch the roll and we're thinking, you can tell me. I say, hey, no, what'd you see there? What were you doing there? You can tell me, but guess what? I remember the roll too. And I'm thinking, well, I saw it with my own 2 eyes and I know why, because I've been there myself. I've been scared on the mat before. I've been all those things you felt. I've been exhausted on the mat. I've been too tense. I've been spazzy on the mat before. I've been all the things that I see, right? So there ain't
And your
no,
mind's elsewhere. Yeah.
Yeah, there's no fooling. There's no fooling these black belt coaches. They're psychic. They're
That's
just
interesting
de
to know.
facto psychic.
Hey, Frank, I'm going to need to wrap this up now. I've got to get this puppy out. I fed him, and you know what comes next. So I gotta prevent a situation from happening here. And also, Sophia is going to be coming in here in a minute. But it's good talking to you this afternoon. Get another episode rep in, even off schedule. We'll be back on Sunday, I'm sure. And we're just going to keep churning and burning. I am enjoying these impromptus, by the way. So with that, I'll turn it over to you, sir.
I know this is family time. Enjoy the night, Noah, with your family.
Absolutely. Thanks, man.
Bye,
Take care.
bye, buddy.